In 1799, a mentally disabled boy named Victor was found alone in the woods, presumably abandoned by his family. When Dr. Jean Itard, a French physician, discovered the 12-year-old, he took responsibility for his welfare and education. The start of special education as a discipline is often attributed to Dr. Itard's thorough documentation of his experiences with Victor. Little is known about attempts to educate children with disabilities before 1799. The early 19th century was marked by Enlightenment attitudes toward special education, in which intellectuals championed more humane treatment. The publication of Edouard Seguin's reference book in 1866 marked the creation of the first special education program. Elements of Seguin's program, such as individualized instruction and behavior management, are still incorporated into modern special education classrooms. By the turn of the century, however, theories of Darwinism had infiltrated popular culture, influencing common perceptions toward people with disabilities. During this period, physicians such as Harry Heselden openly practiced euthanasia of what he called defective newborns. Dr. Heselden campaigned for the adoption of these practices across the country, gaining powerful support even among advocates for the disabled community, such as Helen Keller. On December 18, 1915, Ms. Keller was quoted in a periodical as stating, "It is the possibilities of happiness, intelligence, and power that give life its sanctity, and they are absent in the case of a poor, misshapen, paralyzed, unthinking creature. The toleration of such abnormalities tends to lessen the sacredness in which normal life is held. It seems to me that the simplest, wisest thing to do would be to submit such cases like that of the malformed idiot baby to a jury of expert physicians." Despite being an advocate for the physically disabled population, Helen Keller shared the views of her era that assumed people with mental disabilities could not live fulfilling, productive lives. During the first half of the 20th century, involuntary mass sterilization and institutionalization of people with disabilities was common. In 1927, the Supreme Court ruled in Buck v. Bell that sterilization was legal. Following this decision, over 60,000 individuals with mental disabilities were sterilized in the United States. Despite prejudiced attitudes, the White House Conference on Children, held in 1910, marked a slight change in how society believed students with disabilities should be treated. The conference recommended that children with disabilities be moved out of institutions and into public schools, but put in separate classrooms. The shift from isolation to segregation continued until the 1930s Great Depression led to dramatically decreased funding in all schools. By 1918, all states had instituted compulsory attendance laws. However, many state courts ruled that these rights to education did not apply to disabled individuals. Around this period, local advocacy organizations began to crop up all over the United States, forming grassroots support systems for parents of children with disabilities through which they could fight for equal opportunities.
In the 1950s, these organizations gained force on the national level to help further the case of special education. The Supreme Court ruled in the 1954 case Brown v. Board that it was unconstitutional to allow segregated education on the basis of a student's unalterable characteristics, such as race or disability. This gave disability advocacy groups a foothold on which to stake their claim. As a result, the National Defense Act of 1958 provided funding to colleges for training special education leadership personnel. The 1965 Elementary and Secondary Education Act provided additional funding and authorized the establishment of the Bureau of Education for Handicapped and the National Advisory Council on Handicapped Children. Despite the legal advances being made, until the mid-1970s, laws in most states allowed school districts to refuse to enroll any student they considered unreachable, a term that was generally defined by local school administration. As late as 1969, courts in North Carolina ruled that it was a crime for parents to continue enrolling a special needs child after exclusion from public schools.